LaMelo Ball has had one of the craziest, non-traditional paths to making it to the NBA in league history. By paving his own way, LaMelo Ball has gone from playing in Lithuania to Australia to becoming an all-star in the NBA. Today, we're going to be talking about how LaMelo Ball shaped his own path, making it to the NBA, and how players have now found different ways to make it to the NBA because of him. Growing up in Chino Hills, California, LaMelo became a star due to the media surrounding his family. His two older brothers, Lonzo and LiAngelo, had been top-ranked prospects in their respective classes, with both ending up going to UCLA as well. The three brothers would all play at their public high school, Chino Hills High School, together when LaMelo was a freshman. The three brothers combined with their cousin Andre Ball and future first-round pick Onyeka Okongwu. This team famously went undefeated in LaMelo's freshman year, claiming a national championship. They made national news amongst basketball fans, as no public team had competed the way that they did against private schools across a whole season. As a freshman, LaMelo averaged 16.4 points per game and 3.8 assists, and shared the National Freshman of the Year award with his teammate Onyeka Okongwu. After Lonzo left the team, LiAngelo and LaMelo would take over in his sophomore season, going 33-3, with Melo averaging 26.7 points per game and nearly 10 assists, getting All-American honors as well. Now that LaMelo had become the only brother left in the house going into his junior season, this is where his career would take a huge turn. He went from being All-American in a public high school to now becoming a professional player at the age of 16. LaMelo would go overseas with his brother LiAngelo to play in Lithuania, where he would become the youngest American to ever sign a pro basketball contract. This meant that he would not be eligible to play college basketball, which was widely criticized by the media. While in Lithuania, LaMelo had described the experience as life-changing, stating that his whole mental changed when in Lithuania, as we can see from this interview. After leaving Lithuania, he would end up playing for his dad's new professional league called the Junior Basketball League on the Los Angeles Ballers. Over his season, he would average 39.6 points per game, 14.6 assists, and 11.5 rebounds, proving that he was a lot better than the competition that he was playing against at the time, even though it wasn't seen as tough competition. He would end up going on tour with the All-Star team after the season, playing against multiple teams overseas. His time on the tour would end shortly, as he would end up in a scuffle in the middle of a game and would get ejected from the game after slapping an opponent after a whistle. Many draft experts at the time were still very weary on LaMelo Ball and his draft stock. Some were optimistic about his future, but the national thoughts on him were at the lowest that they had ever been. After a failed stint in Lithuania and months spent playing summer basketball in what was seen as a fake league by many, also losing his college eligibility, many were ready to give up on him. During his senior season, he would try to go back to the traditional path to become a draft prospect and go to Spire Academy, a prep school in Ohio. There would be even more controversy with this move because LaMelo had already lost his amateur eligibility, which put the team itself in jeopardy of competing, and they would have to compete outside of the Ohio School Athletics Administration. Many teams had to cancel their matchups against Spire and feel that they would lose their eligibility to compete. Throughout the season, though, he would play very well and win the team's MVP award, but he would be ineligible to play in the McDonald's All-American game despite being picked by many to play in it. After his senior season, he would end up having to make a tough decision where he would be ineligible to compete in college, and many G League teams were still hesitant to take a risk on him due to them not being sure how good he really was. The narrative around LaMelo at this time was that he was a talented player. Yes, he had good size, but the level of competition was very skewed over his years in high school, and many teams were hesitant with his play style. He had still been known for his 92-point game in high school, but not everyone was impressed by that. Teams still believed that he was a selfish player and took way too many shots for their liking. LaMelo knew that something needed to change if he was going to create his dream of being an NBA player. And in 2019, at just 18 years old, he made a very unexpected move that people were talking about a lot. Instead of going the traditional way of playing college basketball, since he wasn't allowed to after he lost his eligibility, because this was before the NIL times as we know now, he decided to pack up his bags and go to Australia to join the NBL. Now, this wasn't just about playing basketball. He wanted to prove to everyone that he could really hoop. He didn't want to go out there and play against competition like he did in the summer, against guys that his dad found on the street putting up 50 points per game. He wanted to go to a league where many professional players had played before, as there have been almost 15 guys drafted from the NBL before LaMelo got there. One year, they even had 4 guys drafted in the same year. Now, LaMelo got there and he started balling. In just 12 games, he put up 17 points, 7.6 rebounds, and nearly 7 assists per game. And on November 25th of 2019, he dropped a 32-point triple-double, becoming the youngest player in NBL history to achieve that. Now, the difference between LaMelo and the rest of the guys that had been drafted from the NBL was that LaMelo decided to go here as a stepping stone to prove to himself and others that he could play at another level. A lot of the guys that were drafted from the NBL before had been guys that grew up maybe in the area in Australia, or guys that went after college, went there, and then ended up going to the NBA because I saw them there. LaMelo decided that out of his best interest, he should go to this league to prove himself, and he would be drafted there. Now, during this time, like I just said, the youngest player to drop a triple-double in NBL history, it was very hard for the scouts to not watch this. Even NBA scouts that didn't believe in him before, the narrative was really changing because he was going out there and competing against guys that had formerly been in the NBA, guys that would go into the NBA after this as well, since there would be many more players drafted out of the NBL going forward after this, with other players going through the same route after LaMelo paved the way. He was going up against guys that would end up being in the NBA or had already been in the NBA, and scouts had to swallow their words if they said bad things about him before, because he was proving to everyone that he could really hoop. And the narrative quickly shifted over this time period, and he would end up being drafted 3rd overall in the 2020 draft to the Charlotte Hornets, where we now know him today. Now, LaMelo's path to the NBA may not seem as different or weird as it would back then nowadays, because so many players have gone throughout this same route in history. We see so many different semi-professional leagues, or leagues where high schoolers can go before college, and with NIL, they can still get paid and then end up going to college. Now, that was very different for LaMelo at that time, and he is definitely one of the reasons why the rules changed. We saw so many players get affected by those rules, and now it's completely different. Players going through leagues like Overtime Elite when they're younger before college, and now still being able to keep that eligibility to play when they're in college. LaMelo Ball paved a path for many players, and it has gone almost under the radar. When we look at his brothers, LiAngelo Ball, who is now almost a famous rapper, getting a $12 million deal, he didn't have it as well. Obviously, he would get arrested when he was in China with UCLA, and his basketball career would end up going a little downhill after that. Lonzo, very different as well. He was a senior when LaMelo was a freshman, went to UCLA, and then would end up getting drafted by the Lakers in the first round as well. He was pretty much already in the NBA by the time LaMelo was even a junior in high school. So LaMelo had to pave his own path, and he went through a very unconventional path, but one that many players have followed in his footsteps since then, especially with the route of the NBL, proving that maybe you don't have to play in the G League before you make the NBA. Maybe you don't have to go to college. And that's why we've seen so much change since then. And LaMelo Ball can be one of those players that we look at and see that there are multiple paths to getting to the NBA. Let me know down below what you guys think of LaMelo Ball's future. Do you think he could go on and be one of the best players in Hornets history? Or do you still think that he has a lot left to prove in his career? Either way, he proved everyone wrong that doubted him, and he proved his dad, LeVar Ball, right, that maybe they are the best 3 brothers in basketball history. Let me know what you guys think down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.